Baki Hanma is a 13-year-old boy who is going to fight 100 bandits right now because his father Yujiro Hanma is the strongest man on earth, and his son's task, no matter what, is to become as strong as his father. In this he is helped by his mother Emi Akazawa, who is madly in love with Yujiro. She does not feel any love for Baki, but only helps him with training so that he becomes stronger. She was the one who paid these bandits to fight Baki. Although he is strong, he could only lay down 37 of them. Tokugawa watched this fight. Roughly speaking, this is Emi's subordinate. It was he who organized this fight. He also forced the head of one of the mafia to fight Baki in the future. His name is Hanayama, and at the age of 15 he is already considered one of the strongest in the city. He easily deals with each opponent, and only Yujiro is considered stronger than him. Since this haunts the young mafia boss, he agrees to fight Baki in order to fight his father afterwards. Baki trains in a special laboratory. But realizing that such training will not make him as strong as his father, he decides to destroy everything and find himself a new way to become stronger. While he was thinking about this, in the park he comes across professional boxer Muhammad Ali Jr., who is the undisputed champion in his weight. And it even gets to the point that he has to travel to different places just to find himself a sparring partner who is not afraid to fight him. Baki decides to challenge him and fight, but he gets knocked out with one punch. This was his first defeat, after which he runs home in tears. Baki decides he needs to follow in his father's footsteps, so he heads off to the mountains. There he is met by Ando, a longtime friend of the Hanma family. He once trained here with Yujiro, who also came to these mountains to become stronger. Baki tells him that he came here to defeat Yashizaru, a 3-meter demon, who is considered the king of this mountain. One of these was destroyed by Yujiro. Baki comes to this monster and begins to experience great fear. Ando comes running to help him, but Yashizaru inflicts very severe injuries on him. Only fire helped to scare away this monster. Because of the wound, an ambulance had to be called, which took Ando to the hospital by helicopter. Baki understands that he needs to step over himself and go through some kind of limiting human power, and for this he jumps off a cliff. While flying, he feels like everything is slowed down, allowing him to dodge rocks and land safely in the water. Having become stronger, he again went to Yashizaru, and during the battle he was even able to deprive him of his eye. They fought furiously, and Baki was badly injured. Ando, who was discharged from the hospital, ran to his aid, who wanted to destroy the monster, but Baki stopped him. He said that he and the monster were badly injured, but still continued to fight. They respect each other as an adversary, and therefore no one should interfere with their battle. Baki still manages to defeat Yashizaru, and the monster simply leaves after the defeat. He does not feel any pleasure from such a victory, because Baki badly injured the monster and even deprived him of his eye, and Yashizaru was simply defending himself. Feeling guilty, he heads to the monster's lair, where he apologizes to him and gives him a gift, the head of his wife, who was once destroyed by Yujiro. In return, Yashizaru gives him his phone, which he lost during the fight with Baki. Afterwards, he goes to his mother's house, who shows him Muhammad Ali Jr.'s recent fight for the middleweight championship. She tried to bribe him for 100 million yen to fight her son. But money does not interest him, and therefore he refused. After the win, he wanted to win the heavyweight division too. To do this, he gained 15 kilograms in 2 months, but Baki did not like it. He said that old Muhammad Jr. was much faster and more dangerous. He went to the gym where Muhammad Jr. is training and said that he considers boxing an imperfect sport, and even more so does not consider it a martial art. But despite this, he respects him very much and will support him to the end. These words deeply hurt Muhammad Jr. and others in this room too. They tried to show the guy how hard the boxers hit the bags, but Baki tore it apart with one punch, showing that at 13 he was the strongest in this room. The day arrives for Muhammad Jr. to fight for the heavyweight championship. But before entering the ring, his team is attacked by Hanayama. They begin to fight, but the 15-year-old mafia boss grabs Muhammad Jr.'s hand and squeezes his joints with his grip, causing his tendons and veins to burst. But despite such injuries, Muhammad Jr. continues to fight, and the thing is that he is a horseman, and it is customary for them to fight to the end. But Hanayama still finishes him off, which is why Muhammad Jr. is taken to the hospital. Baki found out about this and went to avenge the boxer, not noticing the guards along the way. Baki knocked him down with the first blow. No one had ever managed to hit Hanayama like that before. But their battle was interrupted by the police, who came to someone's call. Baki said he was ready to fight him anytime. Such impudence infuriates Hanayama,
causing him to turn the car into a pile of metal. Baki then visits Muhammad Jr. in the hospital. He tells him that he recently saw Hanayama. And even though Bucky's legs were trembling with fear, he is looking forward to their new meeting. Baki knew that the mob boss could attack him at any moment, and that's what Hanayama did at the mall. Due to the surprise effect, he managed to beat up Baki. To destroy Baki, he throws him out of a window. But somehow clinging to the rope, Baki gets back up, and already he starts beating Hanayama. After that, he takes off all his clothes and shows everyone his tattoo on his back, which is done by all the men in his clan in memory of a wandering man who protected his ancestor and thereby saved the family. They began to fight, and Hanayama used the same technique on Baki as on Muhammad Jr. But, surprisingly, Baki could move his fingers, which meant that the tendons were not damaged. They fought on equal terms, exchanging strong blows and tricks. When it seemed that one of them had won, the other got up and continued the battle. Baki felt like he'd won. But at that moment, he receives a blow from Hanayama, who slams him into the wall. After this blow, when it seemed to everyone that everything was over, Hanayama falls to the floor exhausted. At this moment, Baki gathers the last of his strength and goes to the mafia boss. They recognize each other and thank for the fight. Suddenly, Yujiro himself rushes in, with whom Hanayama dreamed of fighting. True, it seemed that the difference in strength was too great. Yujiro dealt with Hanayama effortlessly. Even though he was tired from the battle with Baki, he didn't stand a chance anyway. Then his father slaps Baki to sleep. Then he goes to Akazawa, scolding her for not being able to make a great fighter out of Baki in these 3 years, adding that she wants to test her son herself. To add motivation to him, he destroyed Yashizaru, whom Baki respected so much. He brought him the head of this monster and said that in a month he would come to fight him. Yujiro wants him to have maximum motivation for this fight, because if he disappoints his father, then Yujiro will destroy him too. Baki ate Yashizaru's teeth and then met Stridium, Yujiro's friend. He told Baki that if he didn't want to be destroyed by his father, then he needed to train. Stridium talked about a group of mercenaries in Hokkaido who see the battlefield in everything, and in order for Baki to become stronger, he must defeat them. Stridium, without realizing it, sent him on a dangerous mission. It turns out that among these mercenaries there is a certain guy who is considered the god of war, and only Yujiro can compete with him in strength. Landing from a parachute, the mercenaries immediately grabbed it, but decided not to destroy it yet. They tied up Baki and left him by a tree. Freed, Baki begins to find them one by one and fight them, while learning something new from each fighter. He dealt with everyone, but suddenly the most frail of the mercenaries begins to yell wildly. It turns out that there are two personalities in it. The first is Namira, the personality of an ordinary soldier, and the second is the god of war, which was revealed to him after one incident. During one of the operations, he was captured and sentenced to destruction. At the moment when dozens of soldiers were ready to destroy him, adrenaline began to develop strongly in him. Guy was not destroyed, because his comrades arrived in time for him. But after that moment, all his hair fell out, and he learned to control the release of adrenaline, thanks to which his body is in perfect shape, despite the fact that he does not train at all. They started to fight, but Baki was unable to land a single blow, and all because during the adrenaline rush, Gaia begins to completely read the opponent's actions. Gaia beats up Baki with the hardest blows. And after he throws him to the bottom of the river, everyone thought that the tanks were destroyed, but thanks to endorphins, he comes to his senses. Since Gaia is a specialist in hormones, he immediately understands that endorphins are produced when pain becomes unbearable pain, and thanks to them, a person stops feeling pain and feels an incredible surge of strength. They start fighting again, but their fight is stopped by Guy. He scolds Baki for torturing his body so much, saying that his arms and legs don't listen to him at all, but because he didn't care about them at all. After that, Gaia is about to finish him off, but Bucky's body begins to beat on its own. Due to numerous trainings, his instincts have reached perfection, and thanks to this, he defeats him, squeezing his carotid artery and causing him to pass out. When Gaia woke up, he admitted defeat and invited Baki to eat as a token of their friendship. This battle was reported to Yujiro, saying that Baki had defeated the very god of war that only Yujiro could match. To which he replied that Gaia is a weakling, and he cannot be compared with him. And in order to prove this, Yujiro went to the Prime Minister, having announced in advance that he was going to destroy him. There he meets dozens of armed soldiers, but he simply did not notice them. When he got to the Prime Minister, he said that he had poor security. Then he ran out the window. Yujiro met with Akazawa. She tried to approach him, but he rejected her, and added that if Baki disappointed him, he would wipe his feet on Akazawa. Baki came to see his upset mother.
She began to beat him because at the age of 13 he did not become as strong as his father.
He asked her if she would love her son if he could defeat Yujiro. But she just called him an idiot, bit him and ran away. Desperate, Baki runs into 3 thugs who start beating him up. At that moment, Hanayama came to him. He supported him and said that he was even jealous, because his mother had recently died, she had cancer and even with a strong desire she could not bite her son. After the conversation, Baki began to prepare for the fight, which was supposed to take place at midnight. Before that, he decided to warm up for 12 hours, with the help of Muhammad Jr. and Hanayama, who came to support the tanks in the battle with his father. They started sparring, but during this time, Baki became much stronger and just playfully dealt with the head of the mafia and the boxing champion. Mercenaries also came to him, but without his leader guy, and all because he was assigned the task. He had to give Yujiro a lesson for what he did to the Prime Minister. But, as expected, he was severely beaten. Yujiro arrived at the battlefield and Akazawa was with him. Baki starts hitting his dad with all his might.
But instead of fighting him, Yujiro approaches those who came to support Baki. He said that he was grateful to them for making a strong man out of his son, adding that Akazawa did not let him down and lived up to his expectations. After which, Yujiro decides to fight his son, but after 2 blows, Baki passes out.
It would seem that the battle is already over.
But Yujiro decides to finish him off, and begins to beat the unconscious body of his son. She's a bad mother, but even she has feelings. She decides to stand up for her son, but Yujiro did not appreciate such a gesture, and he hugs her tightly, while destroying her. He did not stop there and began to beat everyone who was on the battlefield. After losing his mother, Baki decides he needs to become strong enough to defeat Yujiro with his bare hands. To do this, he leaves Japan for 2 years to return even stronger. All this time he spent in Brazil, defeating one fighter after another. There he heard that in Tokyo there are underground fights where the strongest fighters from all over the world gather. But in order to get there, he needs to meet with the organizer of these battles, Tokugawa. Of course, they knew who Baki was and whose son he was, and therefore they themselves really wanted him to perform. Baki rented a room from a woman whose husband was also involved in underground fighting. She also has a daughter, Kosho, who Baki goes to school with, and she has no idea what he's doing because Baki hides everything so well. And he hides the fact that during these 3 years, while he rented a room from this woman, he became the champion of underground battles. Dappa is the master and head of the karate school. Tokugawa asks him to invite one of the best students named Kato to underground fights. He used to go to karate school, but got bored. He got a job as a bodyguard, but he got bored there, and so he went back to Dappa to find strong opponents. That is why he really wants to fight Baki, who will now have a fight with Kosho, who is known for his fighting style. The bottom line is that his body parts are so sharp that he's capable of slashing like a blade or severing his opponent's nerve, and that's exactly what he did to Baki, thereby disabling his right arm. But despite such an injury, Baki continued to fight with dignity, and then Kosho tore his nerve responsible for the vision of his right eye. After that, Baki started to miss punches. But as soon as Kosho decided to do the same with his left eye, Baki caught him in a power hold and threatened to hurt his arm if he didn't give up. But he didn't mean to lose like that, so he asked Baki to hurt his arm. In order not to spoil his opponent's career, Baki decides to just put him to bed, thereby winning the duel. At school, no one knows about Baki's exploits, so the bullies begin to extort money from him. But Kosho stands up for him, although this did not help, and they had to flee from there. In the evening, when she was with her friend in the park, these hooligans approached her. They wanted her to pay them back for getting in the way of swindling money out of Baki. But with the help of her friend, Baki finds them. After damaging all the brushes, he saves Kosho. Baki is the champion, and although many fighters fight him, Tokugawa determines his next opponent, so some of them decide to fight each other for the right to fight Baki. At that moment, Toba comes and scatters them like children. He is Baki's next opponent. Toba had been wrestling for 30 years, and the fight with Baki was to be his last. That's why he wanted to win, because, according to him, a wrestler has no right to lose outside the ring. Toba started throwing buckets like a child, to which Baki responded with accurate punches and knocked Toba to the ground. But he got up and continued the fight using wrestling techniques. To win, he is going to use a signature move. But the problem is that the years take their toll, and Toba has a bad knee, and such a technique will harm him. When he tried to use it, Baki managed to free himself in the air, and when Toba landed, he injured his knee, making his punches incredibly weak. Baki began to support him, and out of respect for him, hit his injured knee, showing that he was fighting him at full strength.
Everyone enjoyed the fight and the audience congratulated both fighters. At that moment, Yujiro appears in the ring and knocks out Baki with one touch.
Taking the opportunity, Dappo came out to him and challenged the giant who had once inflicted these wounds on his head. Baki tried his best to dissuade him from this fight, saying that Yujiro could destroy him, and in order to convince him, he decided to fight him. But Dappo showed his skill and assured Baki that he would give it his all. The fight between Yujiro and Dappo will be held before the fight between Baki and Kureha, a doctor who knows anatomy perfectly, and therefore made his body perfect. The doctor is Kosho's older brother. Before the fight between Yujiro and Dappo, Baki was very nervous, because of which he could not properly warm up and get in shape. And he is nervous for a reason, because even though Dappo is a strong opponent who was able to fight back the giant, Yujiro bears the title of the strongest on earth for a reason. He let Dappo throw punches, but as soon as he saw Baki, he decided not to linger and destroy Dappo. The loser was immediately taken to a doctor who tried to resuscitate him, but he failed to make his heart beat. And then Kureha, who is considered the best doctor in Japan, came to them. He gave a lecture to other doctors, and doing a direct heart massage saved Dappo. Kureha noticed that Baki was in a panic because of what was happening, and therefore he would not be able to fight at full strength. But despite this, Kureha intends to destroy him. It seemed to everyone that Baki was not stretched and his muscles were cold. But it turns out that before the fight, one of Kureha's patients came to him. She stated that the doctor experimented on them. They spent all the money on the operation, but Kureha did not try to save them, which left her and the other victims disabled. Baki believed her and her words motivated him a lot. Because of this, from the very first seconds, he began to beat the doctor, but since Kureha perfectly studied anatomy, therefore he strikes Baki with such blows from which he lost consciousness. The fighters who really wanted to fight Baki support him during all the fights. When Baki falls, they sympathize with him, and when he wins, they rejoice for him. Taking the opportunity, Kureha challenges Yujiro to a fight. But when he jumps into the ring, Baki wakes up and asks his father to leave. Yujiro said that Baki would take him down with just one hit. With his blow, he injured his stomach and won. From the injuries he received, Kureha needed an urgent blood transfusion, and therefore he decided to be helped by an invalid who came to Baki before the fight. She got up from her wheelchair, and approaching the doctor promised to help him. After winning, Baki decides to train even harder, and so he ran to the mountains to meditate.